Hello everyone and welcome to the Grumpy Surfer podcast. I'm the Grumpy Surfer and your host, Adz and. Before we go anywhere today, a little bit of a sponsor thing from Ombi Surf. So if you want to get 10% off any of the Ombi online surfing programs, go to ombe.co/ref/grumpy surfer to get 10% off any of the Ombi programs on their website. Like I said in previous podcasts, I've been using Ombi now for 8 to 9 months, and I repeatedly go back and do the 12-week program, and it's improved my surfing considerably. I've been on a couple of surf trips now, Portugal and Guam, and I've been using the Ombi techniques, and it's amazing. It's made me relax. My turns have been on the rail a lot more, and I'm enjoying my surfing a whole lot more. So get yourself involved with that one, or go and have a look on Instagram or Facebook, or just go online and search for Ombi Surf. This week's podcast guest is pretty inspirational, if I'm perfectly honest. She was involved with a car accident a few years ago, and she lost her leg below her right knee. As a result of this, she was looking for something that she would like to get into as an amputee, and got into surfing, and is now on the Adaptive Surfing GB surf team. So please enjoy my conversation with Zoe Smith. Zoe Smith, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Few questions then for you. How are you? Where are you? And what have you done today?
I'm at home in Dorset. What have I done today? Not much. I got my dad coming around later, so I did a little bit of tidying up. And yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. I'm off to Barbados on Monday, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, nice. What are you doing out there?
It's actually like a kind of rescheduled COVID holiday, but I'm hoping to score a few waves. I think Freights Bay's quite a nice little gentle breakdown on the south. So I've reached out to a couple of people that I've spotted on Instagram. I'm hoping to sort of team up with them and just maybe get 2 or 3 or 10 surfs in when I'm there. I'm supposed to be chilling out, but I'll see. I'll wait and see what happens.
Instagram's an amazing thing for something like that, isn't it? I've been on a few trips over the last sort of like 18 months, and I've tapped a few people out into the different locations I've been to, because I don't really know the area that well, and just, try to get some local knowledge from them.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool for stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, and it's you can sort of work out before you get there which is the places, which the companies that are the most popular, safest, and it's really, especially for an adaptive surfer, that's really important to sort of find your feet, if you like, before you sort of break out into asking a surf school that may or may not be comfortable having you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think surfing these days, there is no such thing as a secret spot. I mean, there are secret spots, some places that I surf, which I'll never elaborate on too much. But I think the majority of places have been found these days, and photographs and the media have kind of put them on that pedestal. And surfing has grown so much over the last 2 years, especially COVID, because it's an outdoor sport, that there is no local spots anymore. So I think people can talk about it a little bit more widely.
Yeah, sure.
You alluded to there, and this is why we are talking on the podcast about you being an adaptive surfer. So can you just elaborate for the listeners a little bit on what happened to you, and how you actually got into surfing in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So I was a passenger in a car accident, and I actually had I'd been for a run. My friend drove down the road and just said, "Oh, we're going out. It was Friday night. Jump in." And I had my feet up on the dashboard, so I believe that I probably had both of my feet on the dashboard. But at the time when we realised that we were about to have an accident, being right-handed, I probably moved my right foot off the off the dashboard sooner than the left. And basically, this guy was coming in the opposite direction, national speed limit road, just turned randomly in the middle of the road in front of us. So we hit him side on. There's absolutely nothing that we could do. So the combined impact of like 120 miles an hour. And then the airbag obviously detonated, and it took with it most of my leg. So when I went into the hospital, they said it was like an aviation injury in terms of the impact that you would have from underneath. Is such a strong force. It goes off at like 250 miles an hour. And I was really lucky actually to survive, because quite often what happens when you have your feet up on the dashboard is that it brings your knees together, and as you come forward to in the motion of the car, your knee will impale your head. My knee actually dislocated on the impact, so my leg sort of bent backwards, if you like, which probably did save me, and my pelvis. So I was overall I was lucky, but obviously ultimately I lost my left leg below the knee with some pretty extensive sciatic nerve damage above the knee, which means that my thigh has some profound weakness. So I'm an amputee surfer. Yeah.
Which leg was it? Left leg, you say?
Yeah, left leg. Yeah.
How did you? I say, how did you feel about that? How do you feel about that now, with the idea that people do stuff like that, or you must be in cars these days where you see people, especially in the summer, putting their feet up out the windows and putting their feet up onto the dashboard. My little girl is really guilty for this, and it kills me. If I'm perfectly honest, anything to do with knees, because I've had some knee injuries and surgeries in the past, anything to do with knees, whether it's watching rugby on the TV or people's knees wobbling, or when I'm watching people do stuff, it makes me cringe so much. So it must have that same sort of like impact on you too.
Yeah, for sure. I cannot bear it when I see somebody injure their leg, or like, when people post those horror videos of footballers. I can't stomach any of it. I wish that there was a little bit more about sort of out there to the public about the dangers of traveling with your feet on the dashboard. And I've done a little bit of I suppose collaboration, if you like, with a local fire station, and did a little bit of stuff through them. But yeah, it needs to be a bit more mainstream. I think that if you do have an accident and your feet are on the dashboard, you are probably at as much at risk in some ways as you are if you don't have your seatbelt on. It can cause you a catastrophic injury. And the truth is, if I'd had both of my feet on the floor, I probably would have come away with some pretty nasty whiplash. But as it is, I had kind of polytrauma to the whole left-hand side of my body, which was caused from the way I was sat.
It's one of those injuries as well that, I guess, from your point of view now, because it's happened to you, you're kind of like focused on it a touch.
Yeah.
So do you notice it a lot more you must have done research on it, like how many people actually get injured through accidents? Have you done any research into it or anything?
No, not really, because I kind of not so much somebody that, like, I don't really linger too much on the whole mechanism of injury. I think, I'm hyper aware of when I see somebody like on a motorbike with their feet up on the dashboard, and I just think, it like you say, it makes me frustrated because I know the risks. But no, I don't try and linger on it too much. I mean, I kind of I've always taken the mindset that the accident was the fault of the driver that caused the accident at the end of the day, and just been conscious of telling people that I speak to. I always say how it happened. I don't just sort of say I was in a car accident. I always make a point of saying that my feet were on the dashboard, because that's, for me, the best way that I can get that kind of message across. Don't sit with your feet on the dashboard. But no, I haven't looked into it a huge amount, I've got to be honest with you, just because just one of those. It's kind of like one of those things that if I concentrate on it too much, it'll probably be on my mind a lot more than I want it to be.
Do you find talking about it really kind of helps you with the mental aspect of it? Because obviously, you've lost one of, the bottom half of one of your limbs. Um, it must be something that plays on your mind a little bit, or are you just one of these people that's like, okay, it's happened, I'm just going to get on with my life uh, and deal with the difficulties and then adapt to it a little bit?
Yeah, so I lost my leg in 2015, and I'm not going to lie, I had a couple of years where was pretty miserable. I think for me, more so than like I never really struggled with like an ongoing trauma from the way that it happened. Um, I like if very similar situations present themselves when I'm driving or as a passenger, I feel slightly more anxious than I probably would have done. But overall, I think the process for me, like emotionally, of losing a leg was much more tied up in the pain. I had quite a few reconstructive surgeries to try and, I really didn't want to lose my leg basically. So I had a number of surgeries over and over to try and save it. And it was so painful. And a lot of that was what kind of impacted me on a day-to-day basis, I think, was kind of, pain just encroaches onto every aspect of your life. You can't really do anything without feeling pain, and trying to communicate that to other people was really hard. And actually, it's bloody boring for other people to listen to. So you kind of become the most boring person in the room. And for me, at that point in my life, by far the most disabled as well. I'd never met anybody that was an amputee. I'd just finished a sports science degree. I've been traveling the world, like super athletic. And then all of a sudden I was on crutches and sometimes in a wheelchair. So I had a couple of years where I really, really struggled against that. And also kind of, I felt like I'd lost in some ways my identity. And also, like, to be perfectly honest, as a girl, I was worried that I was going to be like super unattractive. And that whole, there's a lot that goes with it, right? It's not just kind of the trauma of loss of a limb. It's so multifactorial, that whole process. But then I had a operation, and I was actually at the Nuffield Orthopedic, which is like a special bone hospital, and they actually put me on a set of painkillers that kind of for the first time got to grips with the pain. And although I wasn't actually physically in a better position, I wasn't in so much pain, and I started to rebuild my life. I went back to work, and just started finding that I was able to do more social stuff. And as for me, that part of my life improved, my mental health improved, and then I was much more able to deal with the physical aspects of my injury. And now, like sort of 7 years later, to be honest, I am probably one of those people that doesn't, I don't think about my leg a lot. It doesn't define me as a person. I certainly don't talk about it often, or kind of, I mean, ask any amputee, if you're going to have an amputation, it's probably the best one. Still got a knee, I can still do stuff. So I feel like I really feel like I've moved on, I've got past it. But there's always little things that will kind of present themselves. Like just recently I've hurt my arm surfing. I've like ruptured 2 tendons and need to have surgery. And that actually, although I wasn't aware of it, kind of made me go, whoa, hang on a minute. And I had some of those feelings come back again of like an injury that will never ever heal, and trying to separate that from the wrist injury from the leg, and being like, okay, just because it hasn't healed doesn't mean that I'm going to end up without an arm. But there's always going to be like a bit of residual stuff that sometimes presents itself when you're least expecting it. But overall, no, I'm kind of I'm a positive person with like an optimistic outlook on life, and I was before. So that's.
I think it's quite important really to have that mental aptitude as well, because it can be quite easy to get suckered into that dark place in your mind and get pulled into it. And I've got plenty of my friends that I've been away with, and they've got hurt, injured, and they've kind of dwelled on it a little bit. And for me, because I'm quite a strong-willed person anyway. Um, I'm quite happy with my own person. I'm happy with my own company.
Yeah,
Anything that ever really happens to me, kind of just, it's like water off a duck's back.
yeah,
But it's taken me a very, very long time to learn, and especially sort of like, I turned 40 last year, probably the last few years to actually start realizing and empathize with people. I've got 5 or 6 friends that have had amputees now, and to kind of empathize with them a little bit, and especially people that have got non-visible injuries like PTSD, for instance.
yeah,
I'm like, well, can't you just like deal with it and get over it? That's how I used to be. Where
yeah,
now I've got to the point in my life where I've gone away and done courses and to kind of see the triggers uh, and the reactions and to pick things up from myself to
mm,
be able to deal with that. But from doing that, I've also been able to understand slowly how things affect different people and the strength of minds different people have.
yeah,
Um, and you know, I spoke to Mark Umrod a while back, and he was talking about phantom pain as well, especially when
mm,
about when you've been an amputee, saying that he used to feel like his arm and his legs, he could feel pain like in his feet, and obviously that
mm,
they're not there. But trying to explain that to somebody that hasn't is not in that situation um, can be quite. I guess you can see yourself becoming quite negative
yeah,
and sort of like being down on people all the time.
mm, yeah, yeah.
Did you ever suffer from phantom pain as well?
Um, so I had my leg amputated under an epidural, which sounds pretty hardcore because it is. And I had that done especially for the prevention or the management, if you like, possible phantom pain. So the way it was explained to me was that if you go in and you have so some people like Mark would be unlucky, kind of, they have a injury, and whether or not it's a traumatic sort of, explosion blows everything off. Sometimes people in that situation won't have phantom limb because prior to the amputation there wasn't pain. So because they tried to save my leg, I would have had a higher chance of having phantom limb pain because my brain already went into that operation thinking this left leg is excruciating. So they then try and approach that with like an epidural so that although you're sedated, your brain is going, hang on a minute, this leg is leaving the building, sort of thing. So it can reset. Whereas if you go in with a very badly broken, injured leg for an amputation and then you're put to sleep, you wake up and your brain hasn't made that journey with you. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So that was the rationale being, with the epidural. And so what I had was a whole load of like phantom sort of sensation, really, or just kind of where your mind just doesn't have a bloody clue what's going on. So I remember like lying in bed for the first couple of days and I kept feeling like I was falling off the bed.
Right.
And that's because I didn't have a heel. So I'd sort of make a move and suddenly be like, whoa. And it was really kind of, it's like kind of feeling of like going down a roller coaster where your equilibrium is so shot from losing a limb. Um, I still get phantom pain, if you could call it pain sensation, definitely when it's cold. I didn't have any blood circulation in my leg just before I lost it, and one of the profound feelings from that was just it was freezing all the time. It was black and purple. So if I'm really cold, I can feel that and will almost go to rub my prosthetic foot, but of course there's nothing there. Um, I did take kind of the standard painkillers, if you like, for nerve phantom pain, but it wasn't something that I struggled with. Sometimes phantom pain, in some people's experiences, will be a lot to do with mindset. Some people will just unfortunately suffer with phantom pain, and then other people, you're more predisposed to suffer with phantom pain if you're suffering with some form of depression or anxiety. And that's the case for all kind of ongoing phantom sensations. If I'm stressed out, my leg will hurt. If I'm really, really tired or anxious, I will feel issues within my leg that don't happen when I'm having a really great day. I think it's like anything. If you've got something wrong, it will be like a flashing red flag when you know when you're down, kind of thing.
So after all this happened and you've gone home, how did you slowly put your life back together? Did you find an outlet? You know, I know surfing came a little bit later,
Yeah.
that you found, but what were your outlets prior to finding surfing that you got involved with to almost kind of get your life back to normal again?
Well, I don't know if you've ever heard of a company called Casualty Resources.
Right. Okay.
They're run by a guy called Ollie Hancock, who is a congenital below elbow amputee. And I met Ollie at a charity event for amputees, and he was like, "Oh, all right, mate, come and have a talk to me about this, about my business." So I spoke to Ollie, and it's been like a couple of years then post amputation, because so I was a bit more confident on my feet. I wasn't in so much pain. And Ollie's business, Casualty Resources, they work for basically militaries around the world, Europe, sort of Sweden, the Dutch Navy. We went to the States. We go all over Germany, and he runs a group of amputees. Some of them are ex-military, but not all of them. Not all of us are ex-military, and we basically do trauma training for the military. So medical exercises where the guys need to work on real, as lifelike as possible. So I joined Casualty Resources in 2017, and I mean, like, just what an experience. Like, you've got Josh Bodgy, a triple amputee from Afghan, not a care in the world kind of guy. And then you've got Stewie Pearson, who is above knee amputee. Kajaki, his favourite film, which goes on and on and on about nonstop. And we've all like worked together, and that was quite a big kind of turning point, because none of those guys, that being an amputee makes absolutely, it's, they make it the best of it and go out there and actually help other people as a result of it as well. And I got to travel the world with them and have just the best banter and a really great time. So that was kind of really empowering as well. Not just as an amputee, but as a female, to go out and do that. And that was a kind of a turning point. It presented to me new opportunities that I didn't think would be possible, and wouldn't have been possible pre-amputation. Then I started to get fitter and stronger, and then during lockdown was when I started to kind of think, what sports and stuff would I like to do that I've always been interested in. And living near the coast, and kind of a person that likes the water, bodyboarding and stuff, I thought, I'll have a look at surfing.
Well, you've definitely chosen the right fickle place to start surfing, down in Bournemouth Pier.
Yeah, for sure. It's a horrible place.
So how did you get introduced into it? Did you just go down and grab a board, or did you get involved with the program? How did you get involved with surfing itself?
Yeah, so once again, I was just bored in lockdown, and went online basically. I was trying to work out whether or not there was any kind of surfing amputee community. Sadly, really isn't that well. For an amputee who likes surfing, I've always sort of followed WSL and had an interest. I had no idea that there was an adaptive surfing community, especially as one of the head coaches for the England team lives in my hometown. So I didn't have any idea. And then I found this guy called Pegleg Bennett on line, and was watching him surfing like ridiculous, like Nazare and big wave surfing. What? How he can't? Surely he can't be an amputee. And then I found dug into it deeper and found the England adaptive team. And I reached out to Peg and Melissa Reid, who's the sightless surfer and triple world champion for England for the visually impaired. And they were like, look, just, maybe just try the wave in Bristol, go down there and, grab a board and do a couple of beginner lessons and just see how you go. So bearing in mind at that point, I didn't have a waterproof prosthetic or anything. So makes an unbelievable difference to how well you can move in the water when you're dragging an anchor behind you, basically. So I went down to the wave and did a couple of lessons. I'd literally been there a little bit of time, and somebody tapped me up and was like, yeah, would you be interested in sort of getting involved in the England adaptive side of it, train with us. We've actually got a couple of comps coming up, and if you represent your country, we get points on the door anyway. So, how do you fancy it? I was like, yeah, obviously I really wanted to do it. But at that point, it was still totally shocking. And so just got my head down, really. I went to a company called Dorset Orthopedics, and although it's still in the making, we're trying to get a leg for me that will work basically in all conditions. And so by the time I got to California, I had some sort of prosthetic which I could at least pop up in. And then then I ended up coming 5th in the world, which was pretty cool considering I was still pretty green then. I was very new.
It's a pretty of a steep learning curve from going to the wave, from having a couple of lessons and saying, do you fancy representing your country? And I'm like, hang on a minute.
Yeah,
I can't even stand up properly yet, let alone turn.
Yeah, that's the beauty of adaptive sport. So when I got there, they'd kind of to be fair, I was a toe dipper. If you go along with the team, you get a certain amount of points. But I was like, I'm not having that. I want to go and do as well as I can do. I want to be, want to make sure that I, surf well, do myself and the rest of the guys proud. So I trained like a maniac from that point, really, just sort of surfing 4-5 times a week. I went over to Portugal and surfed with the Algarve Surf School there, and put a week in Lanzarote. We surfed obviously in California. So by the time I got there, I was popping up, turning, doing bits and pieces. I was certainly able to surf a hell of a lot better than I had done a few months earlier. And I was lucky that I had really great coaches. Peg, who I spotted on Instagram, became my coach, and I was able to sort of suck up some of that knowledge as well. So it was a very quick process from pottering around on my beginner lesson on a 9-foot foamy to out back in Pismo, California with the sharks.
Well, so I suppose there's a bit of a saving grace there as well, isn't there? I mean, you were probably more worried about like catching the waves over there than what's underneath you, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just we ended up sort of saying, how many the half of the guys. There's a lot of guys there and that competing that have actually had their shark attack victims. So we were like, yeah, they'll get them first anyway. Old friend, we'll be all right.
Well, if you've got a load of bodyboarders in there, I used to call them shark biscuits, so you're safe.
Yeah, well, there was a bodyboarder killed up the road from where the comp was on Christmas Eve.
Well, that's quite a sour note on that joke, isn't it?
Yeah, So yeah, thanks to you and your biscuit joke.
Oh, well, there you go. That's what I'm here for, right?
Yeah.
So while you're doing all of this surfing and getting better, um, I, I guess when I listen to podcasts, you don't really hear about like the background stuff from individuals. So, you know, how did you support yourself, and were you working after all this, or were you just still were you getting paid from doing the sort of like the injury
Yeah.
person on the battlefield stuff, and or were you getting paid and sponsored as soon as you know you got picked up by England Surfing for adaptive surfing?
No, I would love to be sponsored, but sadly, I'm not, and I missed the cutoff for some of the grants and stuff. So uh, I'm I'm hoping that some of that comes through soon because it certainly would be, it is beneficial. Um, Personally, I have my own business, which is sort of property development and financial sort of advice around properties that I got into shortly after I lost my leg. And that is my source of income. I've got a good friend of mine who works for me. So when I go away, she sort of takes care of stuff, but then it's kind of all hands on deck when I get back. Um, so that's kind of, this year is entirely self-funded, which is pretty hardcore because there's a lot of traveling and, you know, sort of stuff basically that gets expensive when you're away surfing. Um, so yeah, hopefully some of that sponsorship and funding starts coming through. There is a lack of that sort of support, really, full stop, for most of our adaptive surfers. I mean, the England adaptive team is the most successful English surfing team to date. We're ranked 7 in the world when you sort of consider that's behind, Hawaii and the US and Brazil. For us guys to be up at 7th is a real achievement. But even people like Melissa, who is she's a triple world champion, the first one we've ever got, is still just about getting funding sort of dripping through this year, and a third winning the world. So yeah, we need, stuff like this is really essential and great for us because it raises the profile of adaptive surfing, which hopefully will encourage not only other people to come through, but also more support for us as a whole.
I always find this conversation quite interesting because as a nation, we're quite a small country
Mhm.
compared to like the Americas, the Brazils, the countries that you've just mentioned. So they have quite big funding streams that they're able to push money into to develop their programs. So when their athletes go to the Olympics, World Championships, and all that sort of thing, that they're able to basically pay their athletes paths all the way through. Now, bearing in mind that surfing has just been in the Olympics recently, and I can use the comparison of a friend of mine who's a judo Olympian and a Commonwealth gold medalist, and he's just tried to qualify for the last Olympics, but the up and coming Commonwealth Games. Previous podcast guest called Chris Sherrington, and believe it or not, even though like he's like high level guy in his field, he's still paying out of his own pocket to travel to different countries, different clubs to train and get his training in to compete.
Yeah,
Along with like you're saying, the British surfers. I know Welsh, Scottish,
yeah,
English surfers that have to dip into their own pocket to be able to compete in the WQSs, to
yeah,
qualify for the WSL events,
yeah,
and that they're still putting their hand in their pocket, even though they're representing their country. There just isn't funding being pushed into something like that because let's be honest, surfing isn't a core sport. It's not football. It's not rugby. It's nothing like that. So I think until you get individuals that are, on, let's go super extreme, like your Kelly Slaters, like your Steph Gilmores and your Carissa Moores, that have done everything themselves to get themselves there, and then they're in that public eye and say, "Look, I'm
mhm,
an English British surfer." I don't think any of that funding is really going to come out, and it's really from a passionate surfer, and I enjoy sport. From my perspective, look from an outsider looking in, it, it sometimes is quite disappointing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it certainly limits the field, doesn't it? You know, if you can't afford to fly to California to compete, you're never going to be a world champion. Um, and you know yourself, like with surfing, you have to be able to afford to. It's a sport that, unless you are blessed enough to grow up on the beach at Pipeline, you have to travel a little bit. You know, it's flat at the moment. It's flat all week. Unless you have the week off, you've got to travel somewhere to surf. And then you need time, you need petrol money at the moment, which is like a joke. Um, and you need a board and a wetsuit for different conditions. And there's, like anything, you need to put your own money into it, but especially if you're trying to compete and you're trying to, like we're going to Hawaii in June. That's not a cheap flight, and it's definitely not a cheap trip. Um, it's your holiday, as opposed to just it's your, it's the best holiday. It's a holiday of a lifetime, isn't it, to go to Hawaii, let alone if you're going to California a few months later, sort of thing. So yeah, it's not cheap. And on top of that, if you are an amputee at the moment, you do not get you do not get NHS funded prosthetics that are waterproof. You might be lucky enough to get a one like Peg surfs on, which, I mean, he's surfed since he was a kid. He's probably one of the best. Well, he is one of the best amputee surfers in the world, but he has been for a long time. He's probably one of the best surfers in the country, full stop, let alone an amputee. He can surf on a plastic prosthetic with two little holes at the back that, no ankle, absolutely nothing at all. Whereas I a slightly shorter limbed amputee, which means I've got slightly less balance, and I'm not anywhere near as good a surfer as him. So I need an ankle that can have some flexion. Otherwise I can't, I'm basically doing a pistol squat on my back leg whilst I'm surfing, which is nails. So I had to go. I went to my limb center, and unfortunately there just isn't the funding available. So I ended up self-funding a leg, and that leg, the socket with a pin which will hold the leg on, a cuff which will allow the sleeve to stay on my leg when I'm surfing, the yada yada yada, is 10,000 plus pounds. And there's no prosthetic in the world that will truly resist constant saltwater erosion. So you're looking at that being replaced every 3 years. You're then narrowing down that bracket of people who are able to, to compete within the competition with a prosthetic. So then you start looking at people that are competing that don't actually have a prosthetic. There was a girl that surfed in the comp for Italy that just surfed on her residual limb. Whether that's financial or just from a mobility choice, I don't know, but there's a lot that goes into adaptive surfing that, can require additional money. There are grants out there that do like an OSA funding kind of package, but at the moment I haven't, I'm not there yet.
I think being an amputee as well, it's such a individualistic injury as well. No, it's like let's use a cheesy cliche of no wave is the same.
Yeah.
No amputation is the same.
No.
It's shorter, longer. So it's
Mhm.
not like you can mass produce something that's going to fit somebody of a certain height. It, it's very different and an individual thing as well. So I can imagine it can be quite frustrating. I mean, like let's be honest, £10,000 to the mass majority of the population is like a considerable amount of money. And what do they do payment plans for that? Maybe that you can pay monthly over like a 10-year period, or you know uh, the grants and stuff that you can probably potentially get are far and few between. So I guess that could be, I guess from your point of view, can be quite a frustrating thing as well, considering you're passionate about something, but you're not able to fulfill your full potential because of money.
Yeah, exactly. That's always going to be the problem with a lot of a huge amount of disabled sport, like adaptive surfing. So, Melissa, she is visually impaired, so she can't drive. So she needs to get to the beach to surf. She needs somebody to drive her there, and then in an ideal world, somebody to go out into the surf with her and call her into waves. All of that again, it's financial hardship. For me, I just was lucky enough that I just went on a ticket to ride trip to Sri Lanka, and it's my first time of surfing without a wetsuit on. And so I went with my normal prosthetic and paddled out. It was a reef break, so limited sort of white water impact. Paddled into the first wave in a set, missed it, and then I'd sort of found, I was in the impact zone. The second wave was a much better wave and basically just nailed me. And as it was rolling me, towards the beach, I was conscious of the fact that the water, as it was rushing through me, had actually got inside the sleeve, which you wear on your actual skin, and had pulled the prosthetic off from the thigh. So although the sleeve was still attached, the metalwork to the leg, none of it was attached to me. So I'm just barreling through this whitewater. I'm trying to hold on to my £10,000 prosthetic. Definitely puts like an extra sort of stress to it. And then for 3 days in Sri Lanka, I couldn't surf because that would happen every single time I went into the water. So I was suddenly aware of the fact that one of the key factors that's holding my limb on is a 5'4" wetsuit. And I don't want to wear a 5'4" wetsuit in Sri Lanka. I hadn't brought one. There's nobody in their right mind would sell one. So we ended up having to get this like tuk-tuk driver to drive the whole length and breadth of Sri Lanka and pick up a 1 mil sort of scuba suit, if you like. And I had to wear that in Sri Lanka to try and help keep my leg on.
I bet that was nice and cold for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really nice. Yes. Yeah, nothing like surfing in 29-degree water and 30-degree heat in a wetsuit. Yeah, people thought I was absolutely bloody mad. Like they were out on the break, like, all right there, love, in your wetsuit. But so again, I've come back and I've had to go to my prosthetic team and say, okay, so the ankle was, the ankle sort of flexion was all right. I'm wearing a wetsuit boot on the plastic foot because I don't get any traction on my board. But the main thing is my leg's falling off. So now I need a cuff which attaches to the knee and then kind of goes up. So it's constant work and changing because, like you say, no wave is different. No wave is the same. The weather changes. There's so many factors for us as surfers that you're making these minor changes. And if you are working with, the same mechanics over and over again, eventually at some point, some of that isn't going to work. And at other times it's going to come good for you. So it's a problem when you're going from Hawaii to, Bournemouth conditions.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same conditions.
Not always the same, no.
Yeah. Let's talk about boards a little bit. So do you find that you're having to ride different equipment to other people to cater for your prosthetic, or are you just surfing the same sort of equipment, the same boards as other people and just adapting to it?
Yeah, I mean, so I pop up probably slightly slower, especially at the moment because of my wrist injury. So I kind of prefer I'm a mid-length surfer, kind of, if you like. A board of high volume suits me better because I'm just a little bit slower. And then one of the problems that I have sort of with like top to bottom surfing, for example, is that my left leg is sort of only, I say, like that much longer than my knee. and then the rest of it's all prosthetic. So the actual prosthetic itself weighs a few pounds, whereas a normal leg will probably weigh double, and that's automatically your weight distribution is shot. So trying to surf with a lot of speed becomes a problem because you haven't gotten you can't be heavy on your front foot. So my pop-up, I almost need to pop up higher up on the board. And then, of course, your turning capacity with compression and extension is limited with limited flexion in your knee. So I have just been to that Bristol, did you see the skate sort of Shaper Expo?
Yeah, the Bristol Surfboard Expo.
Yeah, went to that. And the guys at Phoenix Surfboards in Bristol in the process of making me a board. So it's going to be a 610. And it's going to have just that little bit of a kind of balance sort of tip towards the front, if you like. So that's just got a little bit more time for me with my foot. The problem with a prosthetic is, as you know, like foot positioning is just about everything anyway. And it's quite hard when you don't have any ankle rotation. Sometimes my foot can sort of be placed just angled slightly off, and that causes a bit of issue as well. So this is going to be the first board where it's kind of made for me. At the moment, I'm just surfing like a Mick Fanning soft top performance board, which is like for the conditions around here as well, like 2-3 foot surf. I don't need a short board. It would be nicer to have a shorter one at the wave, like for the comps there for more dynamic turns and stuff. But the Mick Fanning's, my quiver is slowly building.
Have you tried any of the other boards that you can get through the purchase of your ticket at the wave?
No, I haven't actually. Mainly just because if I want to look like a dick, I'll try and probably do it where I don't have to pay the privilege. I would be able to pick up a few boards like from people that I go surfing with and stuff. I mean, I'm happy to try anything, but I think when I go to the wave, I normally just kind of I've got like a goal, and I kind of just try and stick to it and do my training there specifically, because when you've only got 50 minutes and you're going to spend 45 of them nose diving, getting used to a new board, I can't be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to the wave, but I find it quite a novelty. For me to drive from where I live up there, it's probably the same as you and for the price of how much it is it's like 120 quid plus, and that's per session as well. It's a great facility to be able to train on if you have that ability to do that, whether it's part of like the GB teams or you're part of another team that can go up there and utilize that. I can definitely see it as like an amazing training tool, but yeah, maybe once every 6 months is probably my my go-to. I mean, I'm quite fortunate really, because I live an hour away from what I would call the North Coast, which is North Devon. And then I can go to the South Coast. I can surf locally here, which is 5 minutes down the road, but it's really, really fickle. But if I wanted like a decent South Coast wave, like down towards Plymouth way, is like 50 minutes. So
Yeah.
I'm quite lucky in a way where I'm able to. I've got lots of different sort of areas that I can tap into, and that's what I think sometimes. Like I remember going to the wave, and I was sat there. It was when it first reopened after COVID, and there was a couple of guys in there, and they were like local. So local to the wave is probably like 10-20 minutes away from a local decent break. And they'd been there every single day for like maybe a week, 2 weeks, and I was like, oh my God, like have you got money trees growing in your back garden or something, you know? But
Yeah.
I can definitely see the advantages of being able to get up there.
Yeah, I mean the wave is you know, you can't replace ocean surfing obviously, but the wave, it's about 60 quid I think for a session. I get a discount as a Surfing England athlete, which is brilliant. half price, really. Um, I, some of the benefits are the lineup. You get in an hour at the wave. You should get yourself a solid 10 waves. So you can do, if you go there with like a training plan, you should be able to execute it if you're working hard. So it's an excellent training facility for like disabled surfers or like the Wave Project and stuff. It offers an extra layer of me. Like when I first started out, I wasn't scared when I went to the Wave, and probably pushed myself harder. And then when I went to the ocean, I was like, whoa, this is different, because there's elements here that I was standing up at the Wave and wasn't able to stand up in the sea. So I like intermix them. If I'm finding that I'm finding like consistently struggling with one part of my surfing, a couple of sessions at the Wave can actually really narrow that out for me. And it's a nice vibe, you can sit and have a drink straight off. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like it's you need to be able to.
It sounds like I'm slagging it off quite a lot. I'm anything but that. I think if I lived a little bit closer to it, I'd probably definitely utilize it a little bit more. But you know, okay, I guess my point is that because I live a lot closer to the ocean than I do there, um, I find going to the and when the conditions are right, going to the ocean and getting into amongst that as opposed to going to somewhere that's artificial.
Yeah.
Um, but I've got a lot of people that I know that regularly go up there, and they drive from Cornwall as well, which is mental because it's like nearly a 3 hour drive. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, like the Cornwall, like when we go with some of the England team, like the Cornwall people will come down, but they they want to be like on the expert barrels to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, you want to go up there to get onto one of them settings that absolutely destroy your board when you get wiped out as well.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that's brilliant about having like a soft top is when it takes chunks out, you don't mind.
Well, those Mick Fanning models are amazing. A friend of mine who's a surf coach down in Gwythian, he I borrowed one off him, and it was brilliant. It was only like probably what you were saying, like 3 to 4 foot, like on a mid to high tide, and it was brilliant. It was shaped enough on the bottom to be able to do the turns that you wanted to, but it
Yeah,
had enough volume in it as well to get into any of the rolling swell before it peaked, which is
yeah,
brilliant. And what you want, right? You want to get into those waves
yeah.
early so you can enjoy what you're doing.
Exactly. That's so super important for me to be able to get into a wave early, to take it a little bit more time to then sort of drop down and make a bottom turn. I need to just have that little bit extra time, and those Mick Fanning boards are really good for that. It feels they're so stable. You feel like you're on a sort of 8-9 foot huge thing when you come up, and they hold a rail really nice as well. So yeah, I'm a fan of them.
What other projects have you got coming up at the moment? You mentioned you're going away to Barbados. Have you got anything coming up with the Surfing GB team?
Yeah, so we've got the first leg of I think the inaugural World Adaptive Tour, which is in Queens, Waikiki, Hawaii, in first week in June. So there's a group of us going over to that, and then hopefully, kind of depends on the condition of my wrist, I'll be over to the US Open in September and the Supergirl Pro. And then we also have the English competition, which is open to all international surfers, and that's at the Wave on the 7th of July.
Oh, nice. What are your main goals then for these next 6 months to a year? Have you got any goals that you've set yourself?
Yeah, um, I would like to medal at the World Championships this year, or if nothing else, just surf the best I can surf. But I would like to come away with a medal. And I would certainly like to be English number one, but in the English competition in July. That would be my goal. That's at the Wave. hopefully people from all over the Adaptive World Tour will come down and have a go. It's also sort of back to back with the Welsh, so there's a bit for them to come across for. I know a few people that are coming, so fingers crossed. That'll be a good day.
Amazing. I have every faith that you're going to do really, really well in that.
Cheers.
Well, Zoe Smith, it's been absolutely amazing talking to you, and thank you very much for your stories and opening up.
No, yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to come on and do something like this. It's and thanks for sort of supporting the adaptive surfing community. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks, Zoe.
Cheers, mate.